American War. The sinking of the Lusitania was in 1915 and led to the United States entering World War I.
But the United States didn't enter the war until 1917.
Well, Dick, it took a while for the men behind the scenes to make it happen. The key device for getting America into the war was the sinking of the Lusitania. Kept hidden from the public was the fact that the ship, which was a passenger vessel, was carrying 6 million rounds of ammunition to Britain. President Wilson made sure that the cargo of ammunition was kept secret by ordering the ship's manifest be locked away in the U.S. Treasury's archives. Furthermore, the British had broken Germany's naval code and therefore knew approximately where the U-boats patrolling the British Isles were located. British Commander Joseph Kenworthy later said,
"The Lusitania was deliberately sent at considerably reduced speed into an area where a U-boat was known to be waiting, and with their escorts withdrawn." That the Lusitania's cargo included military equipment and munitions was a violation of the Neutrality Act. The German embassy in Washington tried to warn American civilians against sailing on the Lusitania by placing this advertisement in 50 prominent U.S. newspapers, mostly along the eastern seaboard. The U.S. State Department threatened each paper with libel suits if it printed this ad. Only one publication, the Des Moines Register, had the courage to run the ad despite the threat, which is why we have a copy of it today. Unfortunately, a paper in Des Moines, Iowa, was not likely to have been seen by people boarding the ship in New York. On May 7, 1915, a German U-boat torpedo struck the Lusitania, and it sank in only 18 minutes, sending almost 1,200 people to their death, 128 of whom were Americans. The globalists used their buyout of the 25 major newspapers to ensure that the general public would never know the true facts of the Lusitania sinking. At the same time, they used the press to foment anti-German sentiment so Americans would want to go to war. And that, in a nutshell, is how the United States entered World War I in 1917, just 4 years before the formation of the CFR.
The CFR meetings are held at the elegant four-story Howard Pratt House on East 68th Street in New York. The building was donated to the CFR by Harold Pratt's widow. Pratt was a director of Standard Oil of New Jersey, which is now Exxon Mobil. Standard Oil was owned by John D. Rockefeller, and the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan Bank today are one and the same entity. The Morgan Bank has spent many millions of dollars over the years to support the CFR. CFR membership is by invitation only, and don't expect an invitation unless you have a lot of money, national security expertise, CIA experience, service in one of the 3 branches of government, are employed by Columbia University, or have clout with the media.
Darn, I just missed.
Which one?
All of them.
Well, then don't sit waiting by the phone. They hold frequent meetings and dinners, which are closed to the public, but which feature a speech by a guest, usually a ranking statesman from Washington or a foreign country, followed by a discussion with members. These meetings follow the rule of non-attribution, meaning that everything is off the record. Violation of that rule is considered grounds for dismissal from the CFR.
Okay, so who gets invitations? Are you going to name names?
Well, President George W. Bush addressed the CFR on December 7, 2005 on the subject of the war in Iraq. I wonder if he made his appearance by landing on the roof of CFR headquarters in a helicopter dressed in a flight suit.
Probably not. There would have been no media coverage because it was a CFR meeting.
Former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld also addressed CFR meetings on 2 separate occasions. Nearly all Democratic and Republican candidates for the office of President since the 1940s have been CFR members, including John Kerry, but not George W. Bush.
Ronald Reagan was not a CFR member either, but he was surrounded by CFR people just like Bush. As for the 2008 presidential candidates, CFR membership is a red flag to inform voters.
So, while only 4 of the candidates are CFR members, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans,
8 have written at least 1 article or essay for the CFR publication Foreign Affairs, 5 Democrats and 3 Republicans.
7 have made at least one speech before the council, 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
7 have policy advisors who are CFR members, 3 Democrats and 4 Republicans.
To top it off, 2 have attended at least one Bilderberg meeting, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, what a tangled web they weave, Dick. But it's important to note that Mike Gravel, Dennis Kucinich, Tom Tancredo, Duncan Hunter, and Ron Paul have no known CFR connections. In fact, Ron Paul has stated that if elected president, he would have nothing to do with the CFR.
Other presidents who are or have been CFR members include Hoover, Eisenhower, JFK, Nixon, Carter, and Clinton. George Bush Sr. appeared on the CFR membership roster in 1979, but his name has since mysteriously disappeared from that document. Every Secretary of State since 1949 has been a CFR member. The CIA has been under CFR control almost continuously since its inception, starting with Allen Dulles, a founding member of the CFR.
Dick, just how big is the CFR membership?
The 2005 CFR membership roster includes 4,275 members. The following shows how many current or former CFR members hold or recently held key positions of influence within principal American companies, institutions, and other influential organizations. 13 CFR members represent K Street lobbying firms, with combined annual expenditures for their firms in excess of $320 million. 16 CFR members represent the federal judiciary, including 10 district judges and 2 sitting Supreme Court judges, Ruth Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer. More than 20 CFR members belong to Yale's Skull and Bones. 23 CFR members represent energy firms, such as ExxonMobil. 25 CFR members represent the Federal Reserve System, including former Chairman Alan Greenspan and former Chairman Paul Volcker. 70 CFR members represent foundations and trusts. 82 CFR members are or were formerly members of the United States Congress. 84 CFR members represent banking organizations, such as J.P. Morgan. 109 CFR members represent finance companies, such as Morgan Stanley. 130 CFR members are in or are retired from the United States military, including 77 generals and 20 admirals. 152 CFR members represent big business, such as Boeing. 173 CFR members are or were university and college presidents, chancellors, and deans. 204 CFR members are or were ambassadors. 298 CFR members are or were high-ranking officials in general government, including intelligence and national security. 361 CFR members are or were university and college professors. And so, it is apparent that the CFR is an executive staffing agency that puts people in positions of power and control who will implement and promote the CFR agenda. CFR members also include 3 Rockefellers, Henry Kissinger, the National Basketball Association Commissioner, New York City former Mayor David Dinkins, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, Caroline Bouvier Kennedy, and Vice President Dick Cheney. Let us now watch Dick Cheney addressing a CFR meeting.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
That's an incredible statement. Let's watch it again.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
There it is, for all the world to see. The Vice President of the United States, a man with no integrity whatsoever. The other 2,500 members are scattered about in key positions in centers of influence, which is how they exert and maintain their control over their subjects, we the people.
The CFR is actually a semi-private group. It maintains a public